So I'm Deborah. I am going to be your instructor for the next 10 weeks. I am super excited about the Technovation Challenge, so I hope all of you are too. I know it's kind of late in the day, so if you guys are hungry and haven't had a chance to get a snack, make sure you do that. We are going to maybe talk a little bit about the difference between an entrepreneur and a small business owner. Entrepreneurs are doing something new. They're innovating on something that doesn't already exist. And that requires a lot of creativity, and it requires risk. So taking the chance on doing something new that you're not sure whether it will succeed or not, but you're doing something new, and that's exciting. So with greater risk, there will be greater reward. There's also a greater chance for failure, but that is the fun of being an entrepreneur. One thing is when you're an entrepreneur, you, again, touching upon the idea of taking a big risk and really having to go out and put yourself out there, take the initiative. Primary motivation, making a change rather than just making a living. Personal financial goal, we didn't really talk about that, but with a small business owner, it's just kind of bringing in a regular income kind of to get by, to make your own living. And with an entrepreneur, you kind of always have to constantly be thinking, what is the value of the company overall? Like, how am I going to make money off of this one day? Is someone going to buy it? Am I going to use advertising? How am I going to monetize? And that's always something you need to think about and perhaps innovate on as times change. Business strategy. So with a small business owner, it might just be kind of, you want to bring sales up. Whereas an entrepreneur, you kind of want to provide, you're thinking broader, providing global value. Work environment. So the entrepreneur's work environment will be probably more fast-paced and growth-focused, and this goes along with kind of, that you're just starting out and you have to take your own initiative and you don't have all the kind of systems already put into place for you. I'm sure in school you guys have all worked on teams before, and in a lot of ways project management is figuring out how best to work in your team and how to make sure that the team can work together to get something done. Project management, when you're working in a team, you need to take into account different personalities and different work types and hold people accountable to move the project along. So planning what needs to be done and how long you'll need to work on it, communicating with the team so that everyone knows what's going on, what kind of problems you're having, where you are in the project, and keeping track of the pace of the project. And a really important part of project management is documentation. So tracking the information and keeping track of any feedback that you want to give your team or that your team has given you throughout the process. We will be using a few project management tools. One of them is called a Scrum, which is a method that is used in computer and software development. And it's basically a log, sort of like a list of things that need to be done in the project. So you keep a track of what you're planning to do, what you're currently doing, and what you have done. So now we are going to jump into the App Inventor, which is the tool we're going to be using to create your app. So App Inventor allows you to program almost kind of conceptually so that you don't need to know all of the syntax involved, which is like, syntax is the kind of like, almost you could think of it as like punctuation or that you need to use in order for the computer to understand you. This is an easy way that allows you to just use a user interface to program an app. So you'll learn all the same concepts and tools as you would learn in a hand-typed language like Python or Java, but you won't have to remember all the syntax, which varies by language as well. The Android operating system is event-driven programming. A lot of different applications use event-driven programming. So it's when there is an interaction, so like a kiosk that you might press buttons on, your phone that you might press buttons on, even your computer, certain apps will use event-driven. And what an event is it's an action that occurs outside of the program. So it's something like you move the mouse, and so that's an event, and then the cursor will move. Or in the case of an app, you push a button, and so I'm outside the program, and that's an event. It's something that happens. And so when that happens, so let's say I press a button, something inside the computer, inside the program, I guess not necessarily a computer, it could be a mobile phone, there is something called an event handler that knows what to do when the event happens. So when I click the button, that's the event. There is something called the event handler that knows what to do when the button is pressed, and that's something that you can program. So you program the event handler to tell the app what to do when the button is pressed. So to kind of make this a little bit more clear, or at least provide a metaphor, we're going to do an activity. We'll need 3 volunteers. Does anyone want to volunteer? Yes, you two back there, and a third. Lisa is the button. Jessica is the button event handler. And Adrian? Yeah. Adrian is the user, just the regular user, and I'm the phone. Okay, so, yep, you guys ready? So Adrian's a person.
I have been pressed. Meow.
So then she tells me to meow, I'm the phone, and then meow. So I guess to walk through what just happened is Lisa, right? Yes. Lisa is the button, and Adrian had pushed her, and so she told the button event handler that she had been pushed, and the button event handler has been programmed to tell me, the phone, to meow when the button is pushed. And so, are you guys following this? Okay. So you may be wondering why meowing. So that's going to be the demo that we're going to do. So that's why I'm meowing. But thank you to our volunteers. The App Inventor has, you can sort of think of it as having 3 parts. The first part is the designer window. The designer window is where you actually design how the app will look. So it's putting the buttons, putting the pictures, but it's not actually creating any functionality in the designer. The second part is the blocks editor, and so here is where you kind of put together the pieces of the event and the event handlers. So what happens when the button is pushed? What do you want the button to do? And so this is where all the piecing together of that logic happens. So it's creating the functionality, and it's using the pieces that you've put together using the designer. The third part is the emulator, or if you have the mobile device, then you can actually use your mobile device where you will see how the app works. The first thing I'm going to do is, I guess to give you, before we start, what the app will do is it will be a picture of a cat, and when you press the cat, it's going to meow. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a button, and so you just go over, see this basic area. This has various things that you can drop on into your workspace. Something really important as you make apps is to give things useful names, because otherwise it's going to get confusing and you're not going to remember what was what. Pick a useful name, so I'm going to call this kitty button. Since I want a picture of a cat rather than text, see here it says text for button 1, I am going to remove the text here in this properties panel, and I am going to insert an image where it says none. I'm going to add, so here is the cat. So we have the button, and then I'm going to want to add a sound bite. So the sound is under this media drawer here, and you can drag a sound on, and since the sound doesn't actually have a look, it's kind of going to disappear because the sound is just kind of a third, the audio, which you don't actually see on the screen. The last thing I might want to add is some text to kind of label this. So I'm going to go ahead and label it, and you can play around with that. So now we have the visible components. At this point, the third part, so we've done the first part, which is the designer. The second part, we've programmed the functionality, and now we want to see it working. So because I don't have a phone set up, I can use an emulator, which will pop up a fake Android on my screen, and I can test it out on this. So learn App Inventor again, go home, play with the demo, really try and like get creative with it. There's a lot you can do without even knowing that much about it. And then begin thinking about science education apps. So that's it. Thank you for coming. I hope you guys had a good time, and we'll see you next week.